Hello YouTube, it's Lion here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we are talking about Jujutsu Kaisen 0, or the movie of Jujutsu Kaisen that just released this month. I think it's in its last legs already. Well, I'm not exactly sure, but there was only one showing today, which I went to at 3:10 p.m., and there was like 10 people in there max. I had basically a whole row by myself, and it was great. But I think it's on its last legs here in the U.S., or it just is COVID times and people aren't showing up. But I know that it broke records, broke records in quotation marks. It managed to be one of the top selling movies opening in this month or something like that. Pretty interesting, but not really all that relevant to what I'm doing here today. So yeah, we're just gonna talk about Jujutsu Kaisen 0 and my thoughts and my feelings about it, and that's basically what this video is going to be about. So if you don't want to be spoiled, feel free to not watch this until later, or not watch this at all, but I am going to talk spoilers, so be aware of that. So let's kind of get started here. Let's clarify a few things. I've never read Jujutsu Kaisen. I don't know anything much about the series. I know that a lot of people like the animation. I know that there's interesting kind of characters. I know that, to me, it reminds me a lot of Naruto. Gojo looks very much like Kakashi, and from what I understand there's this evil thing inside the main character, kind of like Naruto. I don't know anything else other than that. So I went into this movie basically completely blind. I didn't try to check any information beforehand or anything like that. And I think that the movie did a great job of explaining everything clearly and effectively to anyone that was new to the franchise. So the first 5 minutes basically introduce, that there's this character, that he has a curse, there's this demon that joins him, and then in the first sequence after that, after this very beautiful kind of beginning sequence that was basically a music video of the main character of this movie, which is not the main character of Jujutsu Kaisen, walking through a hallway, getting to his classroom, we get this kind of very clear exposition. There's curses, there's curse breakers, and curse breakers use curses to break curses and exorcise demons from this plane. Demons come from negative emotions that are felt, and that's basically all you need to know from the very get-go. And the movie does a great job of explaining that, and any other kind of bits of exposition that it has to do, it does through conversation of characters. And sometimes it feels a little bit too like, hey, we gotta stop to tell them what's going on. And sometimes it feels very natural. But overall, I think it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. I think it was well worth the $8 that I paid for my ticket. So I have no major complaints in terms of like the experience of watching it. However, I think that there's one or two complaints that I had about the story. But basically, let's talk about that first, and then I'll get into the complaint. So the story basically follows this guy, and I can't even remember his name off the top of my head anymore. I think his name is Utah. Not Utah like the state, Utah as in Y-U-T-A, I think. And we get introduced through him as he's being bullied by this guy that wants to kill him. Well, he wants to bully him, but, it escalates. And then the demon that's haunting him kills severely injures the other guy, and now he has to go to magic school to learn how to deal with this power that he finds himself having, right? And we kind of get introduced to this concept of magic school through a professor talking to these 9 elder people that are hidden in shadows, and they're just kind of really ominously talking about the fate of the 16-year-old kid and how he should die, which is like, okay, man, sure, way to be edgy. But it was pretty interesting because it was pretty good clear exposition as to what kind of power level Utah had. And then we get introduced to his 3 classmates, which are a panda, a guy that has to wear a scarf and that only speaks in what was it? Onigiri ingredients, which I think was funny. This guy would just deadpan salmon or roe or mustard leaf. It was just stupid. It was like, what the heck are you saying, man? but I thought it was pretty good. And then we get introduced to this other character called Maki Zenin, I think her name is. They pronounced it in a very specific way that was like, you're obviously trying to make it sound like the original Japanese, but you're so over the top that it sounds bad, kind of. But we get introduced to them three, and of course, they're Professor Gojo, and we get a good bit of introduction about each of the characters and what they do throughout the movie. And I didn't really have any complaints with the characters. I thought Gojo was really fun. He reminded me of Kakashi if Kakashi was like happy, which is pretty interesting. Initially, we basically get like what would be the first class, but then the class never actually happens beyond telling us, hey, curses work like this, right? And then Yuta and Maki go on their first mission. They go to an abandoned school. They go to a school which has been cleared out, and they go battle this this curse that is eating children. And it turns out that this curse is actually way more strong than they thought. But Yuta manages to release his monster, who happens to be named Rika or Rita, because it's the kind of like haunting soul of his childhood love, who happened to die in front of him. And, he saves the two children and Maki, who happens to have collapsed while fighting this monster. And then we get a bit of exposition here about what is going on. And Yuta kind of has this revelation that maybe Rita didn't curse him, he cursed her. And then this turns out to be the case at the end of the movie, which I thought was pretty good. It was like super on the nose. And it wasn't really foreshadowing, but it was, pretty well done. I liked it. I thought it was good. I really liked that they didn't kind of immediately say this is correct, but Gojo definitely was like, yeah, you're probably on the right track. You got to learn how to deal with this. And they do this kind of very like Blue Exorcist type thing where they give him a sword and they're like, here, man, use this sword to bring forth the spirit of your curse, which was very cool. I liked it. And then he goes on a second mission where he fights with these weird like Buddha Ganesha type monster, which was pretty cool. It was like this like elephant man thing with like monkey paws that was sitting in this like Buddha pose, which I thought was pretty cool. And he fights it with his classmate that can't talk normally, and we get to see his cool powers, which are basically like what's it called? Like he speaks and he curses you when he speaks, so he can't actually verbally communicate with anyone to fear of accidentally cursing them. And so whenever he curses something, his throat gets damaged, and so he has to drink throat medicine, which I thought was pretty cool because it kind of gives a very OP power, the power of your voice, a very kind of clear drawback that needs to be overcome. So I thought that was good. And then after that, it feels like there was supposed to be another mission with, the panda guy. But then they were like, nah, let's introduce the big bad, which was this guy called Gato or something like that, who happens to be this very like Voldemort-esque, like only the magical people shall rule and live. And his kind of explanation was kind of understandable, but also like, you're just insane. But also we get to learn that him and Gojo were friends as children or as teenagers in Jujutsu Kaisen high school, and that they had opposing ideologies, and now they do again, but now their ideologies are reversed. Gojo was very much like only the strong survive, and Gato was very much of the weak need to be protected, and now it's kind of like the opposite as far as I can understand it. And I feel that was a little bit confusing because it wasn't like clear, and I'm guessing that that's part of what is told in the proper story. Like, we get to see a little bit more about why these things happened the way they did. But I feel like that was the first major complaint that I have with the story, is that it introduces Gato and it gives you this kind of clear and interesting backstory that he has with Gojo that it gets resolved at the end of the story, but also gives you a piece of information that makes you confused. And it doesn't do it in a way that it's like, oh, it will be revealed later. It just does it, and then it doesn't come back to it. So maybe I wasn't paying attention, but it definitely feels like it was like, hey, Gojo has this ideology, Gato has this other ideology, and something happened that we're not going to tell you that made them switch ideologies, and now Gato is this like Voldemort character. And I thought it was a miss because Gato really just felt like, oh, we just need a big bad guy, and they got one. And it would have been nice if we got to understand why he was doing this a little bit more clearly, because everything that we get shown about him says that his ideology should be the complete opposite. So I'm not really sure what happens there. We also get introduced to Gato's subordinates, and there wasn't really anything very important there. The only ones that kind of stood out to me was this guy called Miguel, which was like Western, but I don't know what sort of Westerner he was supposed to be, because he had dark skin, but his name was in Spanish. But also he spoke with like a very like clear-cut American type accent, but it didn't really make sense. Like I didn't know what he was supposed to be. They were just like the foreigner, and I was like, okay, cool. I don't really need to know what he is, but there's so many like different signals, and I don't know which one he is or like where he's from, which doesn't really matter. But it was just like, okay, I noticed it. Now I want to know where he's from. And the other two, which were a schoolgirl like Kudere type character and a schoolgirl gal type character, which I kind of liked. I thought they were kind of cute characters. But we didn't learn too much about them. But they were kind of really horrible, but they had a pretty interesting backstory, because they were treated badly because they lived in the outskirts of the city where, you know, people are more superstitious and stuff like that. And so they were mistreated, and then Gato saved them, and so that's why they're, followers of his ideology. And then we get this kind of big fight between Yuta and Gato, which basically lasts the last third of the movie, which I thought was really good. This happens after they've had some training. And my second major, and honestly my more important complaint here, is that suddenly Yuta has a lot of power. Now, the whole movie was basically explaining Yuta is a special type of hunter, or like, not hunter, sorry, that's not the right word. A special type of cursed person, right? He has a very special power that is not ranked normally. It has to be ranked as a special power, and it's very versatile, and it is very powerful, but it cannot be allowed to manifest more than once, because if it gets out of control, it can destroy Tokyo, right? So we understand that he's powerful, and we have seen it multiple times, but suddenly it seems like he got control of Rika, and he also managed to learn how to use Rika as a way to simulate all of the other powers that he's seen. There was this very throwaway kind of line that Gato says that kind of clears up like the idea, which is like, oh, his curse is so malleable that it can do any power. And yes, that explains it away, but the movie was 2 hours. You could have shown us that he was training with this. I really dislike that it just came out of nowhere, because it feels like, oh, he's never going to beat Gato if he's normal. We got to make him like super powerful all of a sudden. And I don't like that. It's very annoying when that sort of thing happens. I don't mind like new power reveals that happen in manga and anime, because usually they happen after explaining that there is a way to get better, and then the character does it basically simultaneously, right? But it was never explained until after it happened, and so it doesn't feel satisfying when it happens, because it's just like, okay, cool, it's plot armor. That's not great. I didn't like that part of the story. But after that, once they get fighting, I was okay with it. I mean, I'm okay with it still, but it is the weakest part of the film for sure. But the fight itself was pretty good. It was like, okay, let's explain our philosophies, and then let's fight it out, and then we're both gonna have a very powerful attack, and we're gonna see who wins. And Gato does this thing where he summons this old cursed person that's similar to Rika, and then he combines all the spirits into this like spirit bomb thing, this like spirit bomb Rasengan thing, and he shoots it. And before he shoots it, Yuta and Rika have a moment where Yuta is like, Rika, if you manage to help me, I will be with you forever. And basically he's like, I'll kill myself to join you. And Rika accepts. And so she unlocks all of her power, and she grows an eyeball, which is, I don't know, significant of power, I guess. And they manage to defeat Gato off screen. which also was kind of annoying, but it's whatever. It doesn't really matter. We understand what happened, even if it wasn't shown, so it's fine that they didn't show it. But I would have liked to see the explosion of the situation. And Geto suddenly no longer has an arm, and he's bleeding from everywhere, and he's slowly going away. And the whole time that they were fighting, Gojo and everyone else was fighting elsewhere. And Gojo has finally returned to the school on time, and Geto and Gojo have a moment where they kind of reconcile before Geto dies, question mark. I'm not really sure what happened there. I think he dies, but also he could have not, because he might show up in the proper storyline. I'm not exactly sure there, but that happens, and then everyone that was helping Yuta fight Geto has been revived, which is his 3 classmates, because they had tried to stop Geto beforehand, and they got mollywopped by Geto and got destroyed, and basically were dying. But Yuta managed to kind of seal them in this kind of like healing magic thing, and so they managed to heal up. And then Yuta has this final confrontation with Rika, where they kind of reconcile and have their moment, and then her power disappears, and she has joined the other world, right? So she has died and finally left the plane. And this leaves Yuta without powers. And I'm not really sure what's going on here, because isn't he a character from the proper storyline? Like, what's going on? So it ended, I think it was satisfying, but also left questions. And I think that's good, because now I want to check out the series. Jujutsu Kaisen was not a series that held too much interest for me beforehand. You know, in a sea of battle shonen, the battle shonen about fighting monsters isn't really like my favorite, because there's like 1,000 of them, and I already read a bunch of them that I like. I don't need to read another one. But I think that this story ended in such a satisfying way that I do definitely want to experience more of it. So I'll definitely try to check out Jujutsu Kaisen here at some point. But overall, I think the story was pretty good, except for those 2 or 3 major complaints that I had. Everything else was great. I really enjoyed it. The soundtrack was not very memorable, but good enough. The animation was wonderful. I thought it was great. It looked really, really good and sharp and crisp. And I can't tell if it was like drawn animated or like CGI animated. And I think that that's great, because it probably was both, but done in such a way that was really like difficult to tell which one specifically. And so I like that a lot. I think Mappa did a great job with that. And yeah, what else is there to say? The story was, you know, about a 7 out of 10. The animation was definitely a 9 or 10 out of 10. The score was a 5 out of 10, but it doesn't really make too much of a difference. It was good enough. It's not really the most important part of the anime. The effects that they used for the powers were pretty good. I liked that it was just very like glowing flame kind of things in blues and purples, which I liked a lot. And everything was pretty good. Overall, the whole movie going experience for this was about a 8 or 10 or 8 or 9 out of 10. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. You don't need to have seen anything in order to understand the story, but I definitely think that I would have definitely given it a higher score. Not that 8 out of 10 isn't high, but I think I would have liked it even more if I knew what was going on, if I knew these characters more. But again, it wasn't necessary. I think this was a great introduction to the storyline of Jujutsu Kaisen and to these characters that I know show up in the story. So overall, I think it was a really good time. I really enjoyed it. I had fun. And so there really isn't anything else for me to say. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought. What do you guys think about the movie? Have you watched it? Have you not watched it? Do you care? Do you not care about Jujutsu Kaisen? Let me know all of that stuff down below. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.